you are the lighthouse, the beacon of
Yeah.
struggle in your local community. What is it about struggle, in particular physical struggle, and maybe even more in particular combat struggle, that they take away?
You can't cheat it. You find out quickly that you can do difficult things. And we forget that. I am a lazy motherfucker, dog. But you know what? If I want to be lazy, I want to earn it. I earn first and get rewarded later instead of reward first and I'll make up for it later, which is our default. And I think that you gain a different appreciation, a different level of gratitude, because there's a lot of things that go on when you're in a spar match or you're in a jiu-jitsu match. That's really difficult. You realize how powerful you are. You realize what you're able to put yourself through. You're realizing that you can get through the 6 minutes. You're realizing so many things about yourself. And I think being the lighthouse, I have to shine the brightest. There's one thing I can't stand is trying to learn martial arts from somebody who's out of shape. You got to have the receipts. You got to have the proof that says, hey, I'll go through it. And I know I'm getting older and I know that I'm not who I used to be, but at the same time, I'm going to ride this thing till the wheels fall off, because I know that it's a part of my identity to train. It's part of my identity to get there and still push myself. There's always going to be another mountain to climb. And each time you climb a mountain, the next one's taller. You just build such a resilience and such an appreciation and such a level of grit. And I think everybody that shared the mats and shared those rooms understand that. I'm sure you've heard the saying, it's not about who's the best, it's about who's left.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Spear and Clover podcast, the show where military mindset meets the spirit of the puppy. I'm your host, Jason Skisick, the entrepreneurial evangelist, and each week I bring you the stories of visionaries who see the world as it could be and can't help but take action. If you're enjoying this podcast and our content, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and review. Share it with a friend who could benefit from the stories of entrepreneurs accomplishing big things and loving their lives while they do. This show is a labor of love, and your support means the world to me and the team. When I meet new people, I am always trying to explain why I'm drawn to difficult things. Why have I chosen to put myself in situations that challenge me, even though it's often painful and it's always hard? This can be in the form of physical struggle like CrossFit and combat sports, as well as personal struggles. For instance, if you think pain is your ally, try starting a company from scratch. The bright side of this is seeking out struggle puts me around others who, like me, force themselves into positions where they're forced to grow. Those are my people. Like so many of these folks, today's guest has not only spent his life testing himself against unbelievable challenges, he's also made his living helping others do the same. He's not only helping other adults like him pursue fitness, BJJ, and MMA, he's also helping raise the next generation of champions with a large and competitive kids program. Branden Hudson is a fighter, coach, investor, and entrepreneur. He's the owner of SBY MMA and Fitness in Salisbury, Maryland, and one hell of a guy. Please welcome my friend, Branden Hudson. Branden, how are you, brother?
I'm great, brother. It's an honor to be on here, man.
Yeah, it's good to see
Seen all
you.
these clips. I've seen all your clips, and I was just like, man, I really want to get on that show. So here we go,
Yeah.
manifestation.
Yeah, ditto, man. I've checked out some of your stuff as well, and you drop fire on your podcast. I don't have the name off the top of my head. What is your podcast called?
Champ Talk with Branden Hudson.
Champ Talk with Branden Hudson. Awesome. More importantly, man, we met at an event for Apex earlier this year, and I think I met you in the car going to the steakhouse, right? For everybody's going out for a dinner. I think the first time we spoke was in the car, and by the time we got there, you're like, I'm gonna hang with him in Park, and we like had this great conversation just getting to the steakhouse. Where were we? Dallas.
Fort Worth.
Fort Worth, yeah.
Yeah.
So Branden, tell the folks, I gave you a little introduction, but tell the folks who you are and what you do, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sure, man. Yeah, I'm from Salisbury, Maryland, which is, it's on the Delmarva Peninsula. So if you're looking at Maryland, we're on the beach side of Maryland. So we're a little bit different than your metropolitan areas in Annapolis, Baltimore, that area. Been born and raised here, man. It's a small area. We're growing, but yeah, I got into MMA 14 years ago, and it kind of just snowballed for me from there, and ended up competing, and then just shifted my life and decided that I was going to start a gym, which, when you talk about attraction to pain, if that isn't the most painful at times. And I just, I really stayed focused on the personal development side, you know what I mean? As far as like connecting your mind to your heart, that 14-inch journey that so many of us, struggle to get aligned. And you know, if you show up to the gym, you show up to classes, you show up to all that, you know, science is gonna do that part. You know, you're gonna get better, you're gonna lose weight, you're gonna have the results you're looking for. But getting that alignment between your head and your heart and really kind of shifting the mindset was really what my focus was, and still is. And it's been an incredible journey from, you know, training and you know, competing and working out in these like garage type home gyms that were converted into dojos and things like that, you know, in yards and everything, to, you know, going to the back room at a fitness facility, and been shifted around a couple times to now, you know, we're at probably one of the largest facilities here on, you know, definitely Maryland and maybe on the East Coast. And, you know, we're a partnership with a huge fitness club called Pure Fitness. So, you know, that's a 75,000 square foot, you know, upper scale fitness club that we have here. It's something like different of our own kind. So we've been, you know, fortunate enough to try to model that as far as the way that they do business. Success leaves clues. So, you know, we just follow what they do. And it's been great. It's been a great ride. And it's just kind of being an MMA coach and, you know, just being in that personal development space with that has just led me to so many other ventures. You know, I recruit and coach real estate agents for the Maryland and Delaware group, which is Branden Brittingham's team, or, you know, #1 in Maryland, #4 in the country.
Wow.
That's led me to, you know, join Apex and a mastermind and just so many different things. You know, I've done speaking engagements. I've done trainings and sales trainings and coaching trainings. And, you know, just you start one way with I always say it's the dirt road theory. You start with a dirt road and it ends up a four lane paved freeway when you're done, you know, and you just don't know. Sometimes you don't know how you got here, and you just keep chipping away at it. And here we are. So I've been fortunate enough to have a documentary on Amazon Prime. So that was pretty cool. It's called The Price of Glory, the Taylor McMahon story. That was a complete accident. We didn't mean to have that happen. It just kind of worked out. 90 successful podcasts, you know, episodes that, again, I didn't even listen to podcasts, just somebody advised it and we went with it. And that's been, you know, I've been able to really get value and provide value with that. You know, I've won titles and my prodigies have won titles, and we're hovering around 300 members within just 4 years of being in the new building. So much growth, man. And so much like just things that, you know, I never forced. Like you dream in the beginning, you know, and with me, I'm like the ultimate entrepreneur. I am the guy that jumps off the cliff and the sun will shoot on the way down. I don't have a plan. I don't have an agenda. I got a direction, but my aim is always completely off. And it's been really fortunate to land. We brought the first real pro MMA fight to our city. So, you know, I've had a lot of these historic things. You know, I've been in the Hall of Fame and all these little things that for us in our area, myself has been like really cool. You know what I mean? Locking in TV deals with that stuff. And it's just like, man, you know, here we are. I guess like the most recent craziest like slap to the face or aha moment or whatever. I was actually asked to be a treasurer for the mayor who's running for office, or the upcoming candidate, which I want nothing to do with politics, by the way. You know what I mean? You know, I'm more for the people. Plus, I'm a convicted felon, so
we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But it's just insane, man. It's just insane where, you know, where you start and where you end, and how, you know, along with everyone else's personal journey that I'm, you know, facilitating, I'm on my own. And I always tell my clients and the people that I coach that, you know, they learn once, I learn twice. You know what I mean? So, and here we are, man. So that's kind of like the synopsis of everything. I'm probably leaving out a ton of other things, and you know, maybe answer too much on others, but you know, it's just it's been quite the ride, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell, and I think clearly you're an entrepreneur's entrepreneur, and I think I very much identify with having a vision. And over the years, I've definitely gotten more into planning and broadcast and modeling things out and stuff. But definitely once I have the whale in sight, we don't stop until we get that whale. You know what I mean? We don't stop until we're going. But I think as an entrepreneur, you have this vision, you do what it takes to get it done. And so many people, especially those who don't listen to podcasts, so many people would say, I have a local business, I'm going to stay local. You're prolific in reaching out with a podcast that has something to say to people that are outside of your area, outside of Maryland, outside of the United States. And even maybe more so, I just love your social media presence. And even as I say that out loud, it kind of gives me the chills because I don't like talking like that. But like, you put things out into the world that are powerful, that are personal, that are impactful, that are relatable to so many people. What has guided you personally to make the choice to speak the message that you feel to be valuable, not just to people that can maybe come buy something from you or take training from your gym, or engage with you in real estate or whatever it may be locally? Why broadcast yourself? Why do you feel your story? Why do you feel compelled to share your story on a bigger audience?
Oh man, that's a phenomenal question. And I would love to give you like this, this cookie cutter answer, but I'm going to tell you a story. Um, as the convicted felon thing, I lived a long time selling marijuana. You know what I mean? And everybody's got that story, and I'm not trying to, by no means ever, and I really want to make this clear. Am I ever advocating or saying that that's okay, or bragging about my story?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we were selling heavy amounts, I mean, 5, 6, 700 pounds, every 2 to 3 weeks. Like, it wasn't like hey, let's go get our buddies high, and when you're doing that kind of work, kind of weight, back then, this was, 10, 11, 12 years ago, 14, 15 years ago, whatever. And I did it for 18 years of my life, my majority of my adult life, and the ending of my high school. I was pretty much selling weed all the way into high school.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't start off that way by no means. But anyway, when you're dealing with that kind of weight and that kind of work, you're no different from a cocaine dealer or a heroin dealer. You know what I mean? You want to tell yourself that you're the exception, and you want to tell yourself that it's just weed, it's okay. But drug dealing has its byproducts and has its repercussions that come along with it that no one ever tells you about. And it wasn't like I was in a gang, or it wasn't like the cartel or anybody was telling me that, you had to do this. It was just, you grow up poor, you sucked into a life, and then you just don't realize how to get out.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got in trouble and I got caught, I decided with a jailhouse pad and pencil that I was going to go ahead and, start up a gym. I was a 2-4-1 average amateur fighter. I fought for a title, I lost. I had no real credentials, no belts in anything, jiu-jitsu, karate, anything like that. Just trained hard, got after it, sold a lot of tickets and hope that I entertained everyone. But yeah, while I was in jail, I decided, I'm going to train fighters. I'm going to try to open a gym. I'm going to be a personal trainer for street, revenue and things like that. And, when you come home from jail, it's like, it's funny. I always say, like, motherfuckers act like they graduated college or something, right? You're like, it's like this feeling. But there was a huge sense of just gratitude, man. The grass was greener, sky was bluer. Like, I'd never been in that kind of situation, and I was in there for 8 months, and it was like the first time that I'd really been uncomfortable in a long time. First time my kids didn't have a father. I went through some ups and downs. So when I started training, my goal is like, I could change a lot of these kids so they didn't make the decisions that I made. Look, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but if you go right, you know what I mean? Before you go left, come over here and come train with us and see what hard work gets you and go right. And I also felt empathy for men that were in their 30s, because in this early 30s in our area, we're in a college town. So if you're not in college, you know what I mean, and there's not a lot of metropolitan going on, you're probably either in the restaurant industry, or you're, in the law enforcement industry, or you're in construction, and that's just where it goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to wake these men up how I did with combat sports, because I started around 28, 29, and it was like, dude, I'm not dead. I'm not old.
Yeah.
So when I came home, I had all these ambitions to train all these fighters and men, and I had nothing but soccer mom and grandmom clients. It was like, that was all my clients. And dealing with females of that demographic, I quickly noticed how they had given up their power, so to speak. they'd given their power up, because, listen, these ladies were just like you and I. When we were 18, 19 years, they had ambition, they had dreams, they have goals, they have all these things. And then they give up their power because their duty for their kids or their duty for their husband or maybe career, or, you know what I mean? Maybe they were in a tough situation, whatever the case may be. And you just saw these like fierce beast of women that had just kind of like forgot who they were. So I was pumping a lot of positivity for them, right? Like just talking about positivity and positivity. And, there's always a brighter side of the mountain, because I was just coming from a negative world. I was really coming from a negative, 18 years in the game. Then you go and get locked up. I got, my fiance had left me. Like all these things were just hammering me. I didn't know what my life looked like. So for the longest time, I was talking this positivity. And of course, with the training, they're going to listen more the kids are going to listen to more to grandma and mom than they are going to listen to some, douchebag with a man bun and a chipped tooth. Right.
Sure.
So that's what kind of got my notoriety. And at the time, 9 years ago, I was like completely before I was completely anti social media. I didn't think, I was like one of them old guys. Oh, it's a devil. Da, 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 da. Yeah. But I knew I couldn't survive a business without it. So I didn't know what I was doing. I got a Facebook and I just started putting out everything organically that was related to positive thinking and inspiration, and just tell stories, just really just doing a pretty good job of marketing, staying consistent online without any kind of structure or training or knowledge about it. Just, this makes sense. Let's keep doing it. As the years went by, and we went from that gym 3 or 4 years later to the Pure Fitness, and opened up the big LLC and the big operation. We don't really speak the positivity stuff anymore. It's ingrained. It's one of the most proudest thing I am of my gym is the culture. The culture of people is just unlike anywhere else that I've experienced. It does really feel like people are like wanting you to win and helping you, and just really open. And we still get after it. Don't get it twisted. But we don't talk positivity stuff no more. It's kind of like an automatic, and it polices itself within the culture. Well, that's when I read this book called The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman. And as I read the book, I had a bunch of aha moments that made me realize that my alter ego was Mr. Positive. You know what I mean? Hey, I came out of jail and I came in from this life, and we can do it, and you can do it. We all can do it, and yada, yada, yada. Not to be a spoiler alert, but really what you find out later on in life is the alter ego that you are putting that hat on, that we all do. We don't talk one way in front of grandma like we do in front of our locker room friends. That alter ego was actually the person who I was always meant to be and who I was. So that led me to understand that, listen, if I can change these and help improve the quality of life for these people in my town, then why not be vulnerable online, and why not share those stories online so that others maybe can connect with it? And you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, everybody's got an audience. So what does it hurt? What is it hurting me? What more can you find out or know about me that someone doesn't already know, that you can't look up? Listen, if I could just, and I know this sounds so giddy, but if I could just really honestly improve one person's quality of life with something that I say online or some vulnerability, then so be it. And the more I practiced and marketed and wrote and stuff like that, the better I got, and the better I get to articulate my story. And then I realized how important that was. But I know that was a long answer to answer your question, but at the end of the day, it was just the fact that I seen what it did here organically and locally for so many people, and so many people I've helped. And I have people that call me that are really ready to end it, man, and or message me, DM me, that are ready to end it. And I'm just like so thrown away, because I'm like, why are you calling me? Like, and obviously we talk about it and stuff like that, and they just say they get so much out of my content. So I don't want to be famous, dude. Jason, I don't want to be famous. Like, I have no absolute, I like the money, don't get me wrong, but I have never did of ever wanting to be famous, for the strict reason I don't want my privacy invaded. And I don't want to be able to, not move and go places to where I want to go. And I'm not saying that I can be or will be, or not talking brash at all, but that's not why I post, to try to be famous or try to be, I post because I really want to connect. And if I'm going to improve the quality of life from everyone around me through mindset and fitness, like my mission statement says, then I've got to do more than just inside my gym. I've got to do it to the world, and got to give it away to everybody else. And, that's why I have no problem with being vulnerable, and have no problem with putting my stuff out there. And, and I almost get like an endorphin drip when I know that I'm speaking something that I've really done. I'm speaking about something I really went through. And, I know there's a lot of people that don't do that, and they live two different lives. And I'm in awe with authenticity, and I'm in awe with just personal development, man. I think that's just a story for me. And another side of it too is it's kind of therapeutic at this point. When I write these posts and when I share these things, it's almost like it's my journal that I get to kind of like express to the world. And some people don't like it, some people do, but at the end of the day, the purpose is not for your entertainment. The purpose is for the helping people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton in there to pull out. The first thing I would say is I very strongly identify with this thing of like, I'm not a private person, but I'm a small group person. I'm talking to people in class at the gym. I'm hanging out in a circle or around a fire or whatever. In the military, the group of guys, guys and gals you're always working with, those types of stuff. I never in my life wanted to be having a podcast or, doing public speaking or any of those types of things. And it seems kind of like entrepreneurs. It's like my favorite entrepreneurs are not the ones who wanted to be an entrepreneur, wanted to make a lot of money, so they went and found a cause. It's somebody who found a cause that was so passionate to them, that we were so committed to, that they had no choice but to get it out to the world in the biggest possible way that they could, to share that with people. And so it's no different when I hear you talk about your story. I know you a little bit. I wouldn't say I know you crazy well, but I know you a little bit. And you remind me of so many of my favorite people that also are telling big, important stories. I mean, you look at somebody like Tim Kennedy or Jocko Willink, or, I could probably go down the list further, but neither of those guys strike me as the kind of guys that are like, hey, let's get some shots, for the Instagram, or, hey, we got to go to that restaurant because I heard they have a great backdrop. Like, it's nothing like that. It's like they've lived an extraordinary experience. They've learned extraordinary and valuable lessons. And so there's almost like a responsibility that they feel, and it seems like you feel, to share that with other people who are going through similar things. And I very strongly identify with that. Where does this go? Where does this story go? Are there plans? Is it just continuing to put it out into the world and letting people respond? Do you have a direction or a path that you're trying to follow now?
Well, yes and no. Like, first of all, I don't really think my story is just like so extraordinary, and I don't see like the things that I talk about and read are just like they're, it's like it's Tuesday, you know what I mean? And
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
How many people are you in jail with that have a podcast in a gym now?
None of them.
Okay. Because I say the same shit. And then my mom points me to my behavior disorder school that I went to for 7 years. And then she points me to the military. And at the end of the day, it's not to say that either of us is exceptional or better than anybody else, but you've lived an inspiring, a challenging, and a noteworthy and very a life that should be shared and expanded. I just wanted to give you that credit before you moved on.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that, because we, and if you're like me, and it seems like you probably share similar tendencies, we will discredit the things that we've done. And, it's kind of like my entrepreneur mind too, and how I've always been. It's like, okay, well, we just did something really big and really great. And most of the time I don't even take the time to really, relish in the moment, because I'm off to the next task. So for me, I'm here's the yes and here's the no. I am constantly evolving and learning more and more about myself and more about my why and my purpose. Selling drugs, you sit around and you want to get out of it and you want to do all these things, but you just don't really know half the time. You're just looking around for the magic, brick to fall out of the sky with a note on it saying you're going to do this. And, and it just doesn't work like that. And I spent so much of my time doing that and waiting on that. And, we're 9 years past that life. So I don't even like to be associated with that image anymore, because I think I've evolved so much from the guy with the past who's done this and who's done that. But, as far as the direction, I'm letting it lead itself, and I'm finding out what it'll reveal. A lot of the guys, a lot of people in Apex, they really want to get on stage, and I do too. I'd love to get on stage, but I don't have anything I want to pitch. I don't have anything I want to sell you. I'm not doing a coaching thing. I don't have any digital content. I really feel passionately about changing your fucking life. You know what I mean? And giving you something to walk away from that you can take and implement in your circles and implement in your stuff. And, I'm not necessarily sure I have exactly that message dialed in. One of the biggest struggles I struggle with is the message of talking to the young man or the young woman or the kid that's wants to change your life from that life and saying that right combination of words to get them to say, I can just change and not do this anymore. That's a very, very hard task for me because, you know, you run a fine line of telling them how to live their life opposed to giving them insight on, you know, what is possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that part of it, the yes, that's the direction, you know, the no, or excuse me, the no, that's the direction because I'm really not sure. The yes part is, you know, I'm extremely driven to change the dichotomy of my family. You
Mm.
know, I think that I have the ability and I think that I have the chance to really improve my entire family's situation. And you know, people say generational wealth real loosely. You know, I firmly believe that, you know, I have what it takes and I have the ability to do that for my kids, you know, and I'm thinking 4 generations in advance and retire my family and, you know, do all the things that I want to do for everyone else. And then obviously use that wealth as a tool to, again, help and reach more people. You know what I mean? And, you know, I don't have these degrees and, you know, all this stuff. Look, my platform is through combat sports, and that's where I found my why. And that's one piece of the puzzle, or the one spoke to the wheel that, you know, helps us all become the most or the greatest version of ourselves and the most, you know, highest form of human we can be with the fitness side and the discipline side. So yeah, I'm so passionate and so committed to making those sacrifices to change that for my family. You know, it's very, it means a lot to me. And so I know that this is working. I know that this is the way right now. And, you know, if I don't put myself out there and I don't share these stories, you know what I mean, then, you know, chances are that I don't acquire the business that I acquire and the know, like, and trust factor with my audience. So, you know, there's a lot of marketing skills that are attached to it that, you know what I mean, that are kind of the vehicle for it now. But before, it was just, man, look, I'm just really passionate, and it's always stayed that way. So it's kind of, man, we're going to find out. We're going to see where this
Yeah.
train takes us. But right now, you know what I mean, it's getting me on podcasts like yours, and
Yeah.
it's getting me recognized with people and connected with people. And, you know, we talked about how we met in the car. It's like, dude, out of all the people that were at that event, you know what I mean, we were sitting probably in two opposite places of the room, and somehow we attracted and crossed paths. And
Mm-hmm.
one of very few that I talked to still from that event. You know, I
Mm.
maybe 1 or 2 other people, and I think it was like, what, 400 or 500 people there. So, you know, that just goes to show you that, you know, when with that energy and that mindset and that attraction will find its way to the right people and will find its way to the right sources, and who knows what could happen, you know.
Yeah, 100%. You got to put it out there, right? Um, so you're standing across from a kid that's struggling. I think, for starters, you know, just to sort of color it a little bit, I think one of the great things about somebody like you, and I think to some extent, you know, I have a different but similar story, is when somebody's standing across from you and they can see sort of a reflection. They see, you know, common attributes. You know, it's difficult, you know, if you're a struggling young person, to talk to the guy who went to Harvard and, you know, works at the investment bank and get advice that feels real, that feels like you could actually take that path. It's not aspirational, right? And so you're standing across from somebody. I think that authenticity and that experience is very relatable to them. But my question for you from that is there anything that you've recognized when you see that person who's maybe broken, maybe breaking, and maybe not on the right path? Have you noticed anything about the people early that end up doing well and changing their lives? Like, what are the common traits? Because there's going to be people that are listening to this right now, and maybe they're not 18-year-old kids that are doing illegal things, but maybe there's somebody who's not doing the right thing to provide for their family or to succeed in their goals or whatever it is. So to those people, you know, where are the people that ultimately, when you meet these people, where are the people that eventually succeed? Where are they? What is their combining trait?
They're quieter than most.
Oh,
Yeah, they're not the loud, I'm going to do
yeah.
this, I'm going to do that. They're quieter than most. I mean, they're social, but they don't broadcast what they do. They say they have an immense amount of respect. Like, thank you, yes sir. You tell them to do something, they focus on that. Or if you remind them to do something, they focus on that, and they don't stop until they get that one thing that they were working on done.
Mm,
They're in there doing the extra work. You know what I mean? You know, that's the clear cut, and they show up. You know what I mean? They show up every day. You know, they're committed every day. You know what I mean? They communicate, you know, the best of their abilities. Those are the qualities that you can see early in somebody. That and obviously they're good training partners and just they've got a sense of goodness to them, you know, wholesomeness to them. They might have their troubles, and they can even be in the streets or violent or whatever, but they have that. You see this this innate sense about them that they don't want to be there and they don't want to be in that kind of life, and they just wish everything was cool and everybody was cool. And that's how I was. I was a very violent person. If you violated, right? You know what I mean? I gained a fighter's reputation in school growing up because I had no older brothers or older cousins. I was the oldest of everyone, so I got picked on. But then I also went after the bullies that were picking on other people. So I was hard headed. I would get busted up easily because I just, what was right, what was wrong, and I'm going to stand up for them. And sometimes I was on the winning side, and sometimes I wasn't. So. But you see that in them students, you know what I mean, that they have this sense of wholesomeness about them, that they want the right things and just do right. And then that kind of grows to a stage of then you see them seeking out other things and doing other things. And when they listen to your advice, you give them an advice, they go and try it. It might not always work for them, but they at least try it and try to figure out what it is that they can pull from that advice that they gave, because again, they asked. So now they must honor their part and meet me halfway in the street to say, I'm going to at least try what you said. And then that graduates to then all of a sudden, and I'm talking about one of my students, or I'm referring to one of my students now, where then they start bringing stuff to the table. They start bringing value to the table. They start showing you things that you were not aware of. And, they just start, you start seeing them blossom as somebody that's a thirst for knowledge. And now they're bringing more to the table than, you even thought they would, teaching you things and stuff like that. So, but in the early days, man, it's the ones that just shut up, do the work, ask good questions, you know what I mean? Seem to be always reliable and always there. And they're constantly, just working on the things that, they've been taught and they're there for, and just go, they go a little bit of the above and extra. Nobody really knows how to go above and beyond when you're in that kind of world, because you're working hard in your mind and thinking you're doing all that you can, like, you do BJJ, you're working hard, you feel it, you're tired, you're sweating, and coach says, you could have done something a little bit better. Well, how do I know? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you see those little traits where they're really dialed in and committed to that. And you take things like that, man. And I think personally, you hold back your best students. I think personally, you're harder on them. You try to push to break them, not like in a breaking physical or mental breaking, but more so of like a, are they going to quit? You know what I mean? Are they really up for the task? And you just push them over that push them to that line a few times and stuff like that, and see how they respond. And the better they do, the more you kind of reward with encouragement or reward with your time or your focus, and then you go back to the breaking point again. And it's just kind of a repetitive cycle as you're just building this human up. And I try to connect the dots with everything. It's combat sports. It's not that serious to me, right? I got a referee that'll pull him off of me if I get hurt, and he ain't got a weapon, and his buddies ain't jumping in. So that's cool to me. That's a relief, right? It's just jujitsu, guys. We're rolling around our pajamas. We're having fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we don't take it that serious, and I mean we take it serious, but we don't have like this life or death mission behind it, because every fighter or competitor or whatever, it's the biggest thing in their world. So, and then that gives us kind of this edge at competitions, and this edge that we have, like we're just a bunch of dudes doing dude stuff, you know what I mean, and things like that. So I think that's the qualities you're looking for.
Yeah, and what I heard you describe over that, I think if you're listening carefully, I hear somebody who shows up, who uses their ears more than their mouth, who takes the steps a little bit at a time, and I hear a skilled coach sort of giving them what they need when they need it. But there's this moment you described that I want to zoom in on, and that's the moment where they start to bring something to the table above and beyond, right? Whether it's their work or whether they're like, for me, it's a lot of times I'm learning outside of class, and then I bring questions to the coach in class. And when I was running a gym, I'm teaching the class, and then somebody comes up after and goes, hey, here's some scales that I thought would have worked, or what do you think about this modification for somebody who can't squat all the way down, or whatever it is. And it's that moment as a coach that's so rewarding, because you realize that for so many of our clients, I hear this so many times, so many gym owners in any different walk of life say, I want the results more than my clients want the results. And I think the reason that happens is because so many coaches never give their clients the space to grow and then become kind of self-perpetuating, right? And so I'm hearing you talk about that moment. I don't know if you have any thoughts on like what it takes. Is it giving them space to grow? Is it giving them a challenge but not forcing them to take it up? What do you think about that? Because I have found that the more I've given people space, the less I feel like I'm doing it for them. You know what I mean? I'm the one who wants you to lose the weight. I'm the one who wants you to get better and get to that next level. The more I've given people space and sort of it's almost more attractive to them to then pursue it, if that makes sense.
100%. For me, it's the dialogue. You know what I mean? So when I'm having the dialogue with people that I ask a lot of questions and I'm constantly curious. I'm a curious person by nature. So I'm constantly asking them questions. It's always about, I'm one of these guys, man. I'm way too deep all the time. You know what I mean? It's like too deep all the time. And like,
That must be it. That must be it. But go ahead. That's why
yeah,
we like
sometimes I
each
got to
other.
reel it back, but
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
it is life or death for me. Like one or two bad months and a streak of bad luck, you know what I mean? And I could be back, flat on my ass. So it is every day. And I've seen what happens when I've seen the other side of it. I'm seeing the fruits of the labors. I'm seeing, the way that you can live life and where it's really truly out there. So I think it's a dialogue one that you have. I think you have to ride that fine line of giving too much space, not giving enough. I've made mistakes on both ends where I've given them too much space and too much rope, and then where I've just been too hard on them. But I think one of the biggest things connecting the dots with what you're saying is it takes me back on why I decided that I was going to coach is because in our area you have, so to speak, you have too many chiefs and not enough Indians. So everybody wants to be big dog and everybody wants to take credit and everybody's looking for this, that, and the third from their peers. And they like that. I am the guy who's going to lead you and I'm the reason of your success shit, right? And I think that once you start saying my football player, my basketball player, my fighter, now what you've done is you associated an attachment to that. And now you may have, and I've seen this so many times with high school sports, you know what I mean, in this area, now you have this attachment to that. So is that attachment leading you to a point of hindrance of their growth? I've seen it in really heavy in boxing coaches where they have an attachment to their fighters. Their fighters are supposed to be quote unquote their meal ticket, right? So for me, I was like, that was a no-no for me. I don't have a world-class gym. I'm not a world-class fighter. I don't have world-class athletes right now. We're 4-5 years old. You know what I mean? I've only got 13, 14 years experience. We're still in the infant stage, if you ask me. So I'm not preparing my guy to be a world-class fighter from my gym right now because the chances are by the time he develops to even have that opportunity, if he has that or she has that opportunity, we're still going to be a little bit far behind for that. World-class gyms are gyms with a room full of world-class fighters, not two. So I'm preparing my guys and gals to do two things. One, be ready for that move when they have to go on to another gym to step into that realm because I don't want to hinder their growth. And two, how to know how to market and protect themselves and know how to have plans in action so that they don't just say, I'm all in on this fight thing. It's got to work, which I love that mindset. However, are you going to live in your car while you do this? Or are you going to be able to pay your bills? What if you get like me? I've got a detached retina. I had surgery. Or, that's a career-ending injury. What happens if that happens? Poke in the eye is very prevalent in this industry, right? Or do you have a backup strategy? Do you have this, that, there? So I'm training my guys and gals to learn how to protect themselves and market themselves for when they do go into these metropolitan areas and these world-class places and these things like that, and they know it's safe. So they're not mine. They're just mine for a time. And I think that's where you really see the change in them because, as they bring stuff to the table and they grow and they become something that's like, you're impressed, you're seeing them blossom. You have to, in my opinion, I have to know how to train them for that next step. I can't just expect them to stay in the gym and train them to be the best gym. Well, now we got to train their people skills. Now we got to train their marketing skills. Now we got to train, the things that they're supposed to be doing as, men and women, so to speak. So, it's layers to it, man. It's levels to it. It's layers to it. And for me, it's more than the combat and the competition side. It's about, creating other leaders that can produce other leaders. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing if you're creating a leader who's just leading. I want to create other leaders that can create other leaders that can create other leaders and keep that going. Because Lord knows, and I know it sounds giddy, but Lord knows, man, I think we all can agree that our society can use some really good, solid examples of just men and women. And it got nothing to do with the gender roles. It just has to do with the responsibility role that, as a man and as a woman, we have as people.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit because you're talking a little bit about your youth, and I had a conversation with one of my favorite training partners at my gym. This guy, Jake, he's an FBI agent. So shout out to you, Jake. I don't know if you listen to the show. But we were rolling. No, we were actually out in the parking lot. We were walking in one day and I was like, hey, man, did you know when you were a kid that you wanted to be in law enforcement? He's like, yes, it's all I ever wanted to do. Because he didn't go to the military. He went straight, I don't know his career trajectory, but he was usually those guys are military the first and then agency, but he went agency first. And I just laughed because he grew up wanting to be a cop. And man, if I didn't grow up always wanting to be a robber. And by the way, I've never been, I've broken laws, but I've never been what you would call a criminal. I've never wanted to hurt people, none of that stuff. But every time I'm watching a movie, and if you play along at home, if you're listening to this, when you're watching a movie and there's an opportunity for there to be like a left turn bad ending that's kind of gnarly, or there's like a happy ending where everything works out and everybody's happy, like I've just always had this pull to the right, this pull towards that, chaotic. I'm sort of an agent of chaos, at least in my mind. I'm curious as a kid, because my mom, I'm going to finish this out even. My mom tells me when we were kids, I couldn't watch cartoons with any kind of violence in it. I couldn't watch, there was no weapons, there was none of that. It was all Sesame Street and that type of stuff. And without any prompting or anybody telling me, there were stick guns suddenly popping up by the time I was like 2 or 3. I'm just curious if you were one of those guys as well, because it kind of sounds like that might be the case.
Yeah, man. I just always wanted to be bad. It was the thrill of sneaking out, you know what I mean? The thrill of, you know what I mean, stealing stuff as a kid.
I'm glad you can admit that. Go ahead, because me too, man. Like, yeah, go ahead.
You're a kid, and that's just what kids do. You know what I mean? And we don't know no better. And shout out to my parents. They did the best they could, but they certainly were lenient on the punishments, right? You get your ass whooped, or you're punished for a week, 2 weeks, and that turns into just a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They loved us, you know what I mean? So they were easy going on the punishments. It couldn't stick to them. So, what did I really learn when I got in trouble? And then, we were a very low income family, and we had a lot of love in our house, but I was the oldest of 4 boys. My dad was a bricklayer. My mom, she'd work, job to job. I think she probably stayed the longest for like 13 years at a telemarketing agency for an insurance company. So, we've heated the house with the oven. You know what I mean? We've eaten, steakums for dinner and hot turkey sandwiches out of the banquet meal. So, with that kind of upbringing, and then you get exposed to, selling weed, smoking weed, and then you can see you can make some money with your friends. I started feeling a level of guilt, like how much, I can go out here and do this on my own, and I don't have to steal, you know what I mean? Because that wasn't working out, and I don't have to be a robber, and I don't have to do all these other, things that hurt people. I can just sell some bud, and I'm helping out the family, so to speak, and things like that. So, it does stem from those mischievous, ideas and thoughts that you want to get into. I think it stems from the people that you hang out with. And I was a very angry youth, man. Very angry. Had no reason to be. My mom and dad were together. I wasn't abused, you know what I mean? And I was just so angry, man. And you know what I mean? I think it was just a combination of everything that just led me into that mindset of, and I remember I was in like 11th grade, you know what I mean? And me and a couple of buddies were out one night, doing what you shouldn't be doing at night. And that was the turning point when I said, I'm going to make this a business, and I'm going to, we're going to get ourselves out of this. So I think it's also the environment you're in, and just the lack of exposure to what's possible and stuff like that, and, I know, like in the Bible, not to get all religious, but like in the Bible, they talk about generational curses. And, I think it's just generational curses of, where you grew up with, how you grew up with, the dysfunction, the things that, the values, the core values that families have, and all that. It just feeds into that, and that's probably why my why is so big right now. And I told you about changing that dynamic because, You know, I would never want anybody in my family or anybody period to do the things that I've done and going through that kind of life. You know what I mean? And even though I've done some pretty tough things that, I'm not very proud of, I've always had this sense of wholesomeness and goodness. And, it's always been, I've always been a guy that you could trust his word and the things he does. But, and yeah, I just, somewhere on the line, it just, my mindset said, you know what, this is going to be the way, and I'm going to be and I was pretty good at it, Jason. Shit, man, I did it for that long. I didn't get it, I had houses and cars and all that stuff that, I did. So I had the entrepreneurial spirit. I had the potential the whole time. What I didn't have was I didn't have the balls to step up and make the decision of saying, this is enough and I'm going to do this differently, and I'm not going to ever jeopardize my kids of not having their father for 8 months. And, I didn't make that choice that I should have made. And I could run up a bunch of excuses as to why, but at the end of the day, I didn't make the decision because I wasn't man enough. I didn't have the belief in myself, and I didn't have the trust in the process and all that good stuff and higher powers and all anything you want to put on it. I didn't do that. And that's ultimately left me here. And I was talking to my daughter about that. You know what I mean? It's like, I truly believe that because I did so long, I lived that life so long and got away with so much that's why, I'm sacrificing so much time, running so hard right now, because I start my day at, I get out of the house around 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the summertime, and I don't get back until 9:30, 10, sometimes 11, sometimes, it's 5, 6 days a week. Sundays I'm still fiddling, you know what I mean? So I go hard, man. And I've got a newborn son, I've got a young daughter, and 2 daughters that have grown up with my grandchildren. So, a beautiful wife. I'm missing a lot of time that building and creating, you know what I mean? Something that I believe firmly is going to help produce that, I can get a good paying job. I can go work and trade it. It's a bigger thing for me. And I know I have the potential. I know I have the gift, and I know I can do it. And this isn't like a Rob Branden thing. If anything, for the listeners, man, just know that you can too. And I loved what Ed Milet said. He talks about the power of one and being the one. He said, chances are you're sitting back thinking right now, you're not the one. If that's what you're thinking right now, the chances are you probably are the one. You know what I mean? Because we don't think that we are good enough. And we do have all these imposter syndromes and these insecurities and things. But man, at the end of the day, there's no reason why my buddies have been locked up for 30 years. There's no reason why I've got so many people that have been murdered and are dead. There's no reason why I have so many people strung out on drugs and I'm not there with them. You know what I mean? Because we were all in the same boat. So at the same time, like, why am I here? Well, there must be a greater purpose that I can explain. So you have to fucking own it, man. And you have to go after it. And no matter what I chose to do as a kid and what I chose to do as a young man, it's what I choose to do today. And everyone can do today that really changes everything. Absolutely everything, man. And, I know that kind of gets a little giddy and hokey pokey, but I got the receipts. You know what I mean?
Yes,
I can prove it, So if I could do it, everybody else can.
Well, for starters, you're a great looking grandpa. That's awesome.
Best looking grandfather y'all have ever met.
Good.
None of y'all
pretty good. But I want to talk again about anger. You said something earlier there that you were talking about being a very angry youth. And, I don't know you. We've never had conflict, so I don't know. Maybe it's still there. But most people that I know and have known for long periods of time that struggle with anger, like very few people like, man, I really struggle with my kindness. Sometimes somebody just triggers me and I give them, a nice present. Or sometimes, I get into an altercation in traffic and I give them a bunch of flowers. Like people that struggle with anger typically continue to struggle with anger throughout their life. And so it's a 2-part question is, number one, how do you feel that you've been able to deal with your own anger issues? And then number 2, talking about breaking the cycle, how is all of that stuff, as well as the parenting stuff, informed how you want to raise your children in a superior way?
All right. For the anger side, I learned quick when I turned 18 that they don't play with assault charges. It will send you away for a long time for them, right? I've racked up a few assault charges.
Yeah, we're like the generation where that kind of stopped, right? Like we all knew people that got in fights all the time and nobody cared, and that kind of ended around our age, right?
Yeah, we fought all the time as kids, and the next day you're an adult and you get in a fight and you're getting arrested. So that was like, and then as bad as this sounds, when you fight and you beef and you're in the game, you're causing too much noise and too much attention, and it's cost money. and it's dangerous. So I think early, once I caught those charges and I started understanding what, that would do to the business side of it, in the drug dealing, I learned how to train myself into conflict resolution and to kind of, he was always there. That dark passenger will come out anytime, and and he'll, that people like us always have that, right? Most, there always has it. I always find it so wild that how many people in the world, in the country, have never punched somebody or been punched in the face.
Yeah.
We don't see it like that because we're in combat sports. We're in, but there's a lot of vast majority of people that don't do this. It's not a normal thing. You just don't haul off and cold cock somebody. But I learned early how to deal with the conflict resolution, and and then just maturity. And as I got older, you know what I mean? It was like, um, I didn't want to hurt anybody. Well, combat sports came into picture, and I get beat up every day. So it's like, I get beat up every day. I don't want to, I don't care. But I don't think I've ever really had a problem with anger. I just was angry, and I was just
Okay.
looking for a reason to let it go. You know what I mean? Instead of like, just owning it. So, that what, unfortunately, I think it was the drug dealing that really took that to a place of contention, because or contentment, because I was like, well, I can't get fighting, or we're gonna go broke and get locked up even worse. Um, how utilize all of that and everything else to raise my children. Um, the first thing is, man, and this is a very hard one. And I didn't do as good of a job with my oldest two. I was 18 when I had them, and 19. So communicating with them with the intention to understand and hear them, opposed to communicating with them with the intention for them to hear me.
Mm.
I was steadily, preaching, and these were some good nuggets I was giving them, but it was a one-sided conversation. So that eventually they tuned me out, and eventually, they didn't hear the lessons and the messages anymore. You know what I mean? And then, as I went through a lot of shifts post jail and during my personal development side, I realized, it was probably one of the worst pianos ever been dropped on my head. That's how I was talking and communicating with them. So my youngest daughter, who she'll be 17 next month, we spent the last 5 years really building, from the time she was 11, 12, really building a solid foundation. And it took a lot of work and communication, conversation, and many mistakes to get to a point where she trusts me, you know what I mean? And I trust her, and we can communicate. And then, I still catch myself, and now I have a new son. It's the same way. So, and with my older daughters now, what I do is I just, man, I just, it's just different. They're 22 and 23. So now I just constantly asking questions and constantly just poking them and just getting them into self-discovery and stuff like that. And then just finding that and trying to recognize that spot where I just shut all the questions down and shut all the conversation and just go to love and just go to things that I'm proud of you and give them their flowers and just enjoy their time that we spend together, because they're busy people too. And then, with my son, I'm going to completely raise him differently than my daughters. You know what I mean? For the fear of him doing something heinous, like you hear so many men do, and also to protect him from, getting himself in something, and understanding that, he could be the next future leader. So there's going to be a lot more, just a lot more to it. You know what I mean? And I can't really tell you exactly, because this is uncharted territory. I know how I was raised, and I know the toughness and then the softness and everything in between. But I think just the communication, man, and just really spending time to just ask the questions and help them get to self-discovery, and then being stern when you need to be stern, and then being soft when you need to be soft, and, going from there. But that was probably the biggest lesson. And one, if I lived with any regrets, which I don't, but if you could say I did, was, man, with my oldest two, I wish I would have recognized that factor sooner, so I could have really, worked on them a lot better,
Mm-hmm.
because there's still a sense of reserve with them, and, dad don't know what he's talking about and things like that. So, but they're also 22 and 23, and they're also going through that phase too. So there's some give and take there.
Yeah, we can only all do the best we can at the times that we're called, right?
Yeah.
I want to come full circle and talk again about struggle, because this is something that has fascinated me, not just as, outwardly. It's my life's mission is helping people to go through struggle, whether it's in the form of fitness or combat sports or entrepreneurship, right? Or even in personal relationships. I can't hang out with anybody without immediately drawing towards challenging people to achieve things higher than they already are, right? Like, it's just part of me.
And I want to say something on that. For those that don't know, that is exactly you. You know what I mean? You do that on a personal level, just
Yeah.
with me. From the interactions with me. We didn't even talk about podcasts or business. We connected one time and stayed in touch. And
Yeah.
you are always looking at how can I help? How can I send? So I admire that, and I bring your flowers for that, because that's a
Thank you,
wonderful
sir.
quality to
I
have.
appreciate that. I really appreciate that. But also, it's not just outward, it's also inward, like my own. I know that I feel better when I have struggle in my life. I actually believe in that and even go through struggle and love it. But I do find that I still am drawn to the couch. I do find that I'm still drawn to the ice cream. I do find that I'm still drawn to the easier path, even sometimes in business where the harder path might be the right path. And so it's this thing that's kind of a constantly evolving aspect of my life. It's hedges. You got to trim them. You know what I mean? You can't just leave them. And so as somebody who is the lighthouse in a community of people that are pursuing struggle on a regular basis, the first part of the question is, what is it about struggle, in particular fitness and combat sports, that makes people more whole and more themselves and more successful? And then question number two is a little more fun. Should everyone be punched in the face? And if so, how often?
Yes, everyone should be punched in the face. Everyone should punch somebody in the face. Obviously, in a controlled environment.
Yeah.
But you should know there's a couple of reasons why. One, your face ain't gonna fall off. You know what I mean? You gotta think when you're gonna get hit, your face is gonna fall off. Two, it just builds resilience, and it builds a sense of confidence that, I'm not the baddest person. I can be hurt, but I'm also not the weakest person. I can get through this. And it just, it builds it builds character, man. It really does. And I'm not saying you should be taking massive amounts of head trauma, but you should definitely be getting in those sparring matches where it makes you uncomfortable, and with people you trust. You know what I mean? People that know what they're doing. And take a couple shots to the face, you know what I mean? And get there and roll around with your friends. Don't just get on the bags and punch the bags, because they don't punch back. You know what I mean? So, that was the answer to the fun question. Sum up your first question for me,
Yeah,
Larry.
sorry, I'm throwing a couple in there at a
No,
time.
no, I want to
That's
make
my
sure I
fault.
answered effectively.
Yeah, so what I'm talking about is you are sort of, like I said, the lighthouse, the beacon of
Yeah.
struggle in your local community. And so to what extent does that, like, what is the benefit of that for these people aside from fitness and the ability to fight? Like, what do they take back with them to their jobs? What do they take back with them, or not take back with them, to their house, right? And their family and their relationships, their friendships, their personal, sort of their personal development. Like, what is it about struggle, in particular physical struggle, and maybe even more in particular, like combat struggle? What is it that they take away?
You can't cheat it. You can't cheat it and cut the corners. And I say this to everyone all the time. You find out quickly that you can do difficult things. And we forget that. We forget that with our, wonderfully air conditioned homes and our plush beds and our. I love to lay down and be lazy. I am a lazy motherfucker, dog. Like, I am lazy,
Me
right?
too.
Um, and I think there's something to be said about that too. I don't believe in balance. I believe in harmony. I think we harmonize what we want in life. You'll never have balance, but you know what? If I want to be lazy, I want to earn it, right? So if I know I did X, Y, and Z, and all this, I don't feel as bad and guilty when I don't want to get off the couch all day. You know what I mean? Or when I want to take a day off. So I earn those things that I want, and by that mindset, I earn first and get rewarded later, instead of like reward first and I'll make up for it later, which like is our default and our go-to a lot of the times. But you can't cheat it, man. You can't cheat, that kind of pressure and that kind of struggle. And then what happens is you find out that you were the one that did that. you were the only one that did that. You were the only one that went through it because it's your mind and your experience. Yes, you're in a room full of everybody else doing it, but you went through it. And you just, you go to your relationships, you go to your job, you go to, like I said, and I think that you gain a different appreciation, a different level of gratitude, because there's a lot of things that go on when you're in a spar match or you're in a jiu-jitsu match. That's really difficult. You realize how small and powerless you are. You realize how powerful you are. You realize what you're able to put yourself through. You realize your pain, your threshold. You're realizing that you can get through the 6 minutes. You're realizing so many things about yourself and there's no other place other than signing up for the military or signing up to be in these kind of environments, and they're way more dangerous, that you'll find that from these kind of suffrage. And I think being the lighthouse, I have to shine the brightest. I have to, there's one thing I can't stand is trying to learn martial arts from somebody who's out of shape, or you're trying to listen to somebody, you got to have the receipts. You got to have the proof that says, hey, I'll go through it. And I know I'm getting older, and I know that I'm not who I used to be, but at the same time, I'm going to ride this thing till the wheels fall off. You know what I mean? Because I know that it's a part of my identity as well. You know what I mean? It's a part of my identity to train. It's part of my identity to get there and still push myself. I'm not banged up. I'm not beat up. I got some nagging injuries, but I'm not, of course the eye was a big deal, but at the same time, do I stop? If it's a part of my identity and the struggles, I'm getting so much from it. Do I stop now just because of this? Well, I'd love to. I'd love to say yes, but then what? What do I do then? There's always going to be another mountain to climb. And each time you climb a mountain, the next one's taller. So it's just something that, man, you just build such a resilience and such an appreciation and such a level of grit that is very unexplainable, but it's there. And I think everybody that shared the mats and shared those rooms understand that, and there, you've heard, I'm sure you've heard the saying, it's not about who's the best, it's about who's left. You know what I mean? There's so many people that, feel that and enjoy that for like 6 months, and then they let them old stories or they let them old behaviors creep back in, and they don't come back and do it because their mind plays so many tricks on them. They think they have to be something or not. They have to catch up when they don't. They think if they're out of it, they can't go back, and they think it's too hard, and then, you just chip away and just chip away and just chip away and just chip away and just chip away until eventually it just becomes a part of you and a part of your daily routine. And then you wake up and you realize you're fucking doing all these other wild and crazy things that you never thought you were capable of doing, and you're leading. It's about leadership. It's about leading. And you have, the only way you can lead and people are going to take you serious as a leader is if you've been through some shit, or if you've been able to do that. It's why, we don't know who these black belts are that we rate to at the beginning of class. We just know they're really good at jiu-jitsu, and you know what I mean? They've had a bit of a story, but we don't know what kind of people they are, and there's good ones, there's bad ones, but at the end of the day, we trust them because they've been through it, and they went through it, and they've built that resilience, and it just applies to so many things in life and stuff like that. And a person of the military, you understand that. And anybody else that's living in the military, you guys know what you all went through, what you had to go through. Civilians will never know, no matter how many books and how many stories and movies, and will never understand what you guys had to go through, and the bonds and the things you shared, and what it was like to be just in boot camp and getting through that, or whatever it was. You know what I mean? So, and look at you. You guys lead. You guys know at the end of the day, there's a confidence to you that you're going to survive regardless.
Yeah, that's true as far as the confidence that you're going to survive. One thing I've been personally thinking about in the last couple of years is this sort of transition from the warrior to the sage, right? Nobody wants to live and die a warrior, because that means you died pretty young, right? And so, I have to imagine that so much what we're talking about is what you do for those people that you're responsible to, your family, your clients, the community, the world, right? But internally, what has that transition felt like to you? The idea of being the guy who's under the lights, who's got to perform, who's got people, rooting for him, to becoming the person who's teaching, who's educating, and putting people under the lights, metaphorically and literally. What has that transition been like for you? What chapter in your book do you feel like you're in?
That's a tough one, man, because I never got into combat. I never got into competing. I competed to scratch an itch, and I started late, and then it snowballed, and I had to recognize then that it wasn't about me, because I was already such a blessed individual. I felt like, well, why do I get to sit under the lights and be the champ, and have all this great stuff, plus, money and cars and women and, all that stuff that you're in that life, the rap video life, right? And so for the first part of my career, I fought for my town, and then I fought for a title, and I'd lost in a very controversial and close decision. So then I started fighting for the title, and that's when life started crumbling, and that's when things really started falling down. And then I got locked up, and my fiance left me, and all these other things, right? So when I came home, I wasn't gonna fight. I was done, because my last fight I got hurt, and it was a thing. And then my coach was like, "You need to fight again." And it went back to the why. I said, "Well, I don't have a black belt in anything. I don't have any belt in jiu-jitsu in anything. So you know what? I'm gonna fight for the title to be my validation that, hey, I know MMA. If I can win a championship, you can't take away that something I know. You know what I mean?" And so that was my first why. So, I fought for that. And then the second title, I fought actually for the cage that we fought in. He was selling it and I couldn't afford it. I needed it for my business. So I'm the highest draw that Stellar Fights has ever had. Each fight, nobody's ever outsold me, even when I was losing. So we just worked out a deal. So again, the why was for my business. And the why was for, my city and for my town, and for my people. Right. So then, I quit or I retired because, I just said it's an old man sport. I'm 36, 37 years old, or it's a young man sport, excuse me. But I'm not banged up, and I didn't take a lot of punishment training. And, so it's tough because, I still want to, I'm even thinking about doing something here in the future, you know what I mean? About
Yeah,
something
I
else.
get it.
Because it's just like, man, I want to know if that dog's there, you know what I mean? So, but then, I got the detached retina. Just one day I woke up, my vision was a little off as I was training for this fight for the first show that we put in Salisbury. And that was for a reason of selling tickets and marketing too. And, it's just like, man, was I doing it for that reason, or was I doing it for my own ego? Right. Was I doing it because, I felt I had to fight because it was my hometown and all this stuff. Right. Probably a little bit of both. And then look what happened. I got this detached retina. So I struggle with that, man, because I train every day. We spar, we fight, we do the do. And I just love it. And even more so, I love having that carrot dangle in front of me, that why. I could switch the diet, I could switch everything. If I've got that in front of me, it's easy. If not, a couple glasses of wine looks good. You know what I mean? Let me get the potatoes, the mac and cheese. You know what I mean? I don't have any problem.
Sounds like we're still in that transition from the way I'm hearing. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Then I see these younger guys come up, and I'm still giving them a run for the money, but they're like my prodigy. I can see he takes it easy on me. It frustrates the shit out of me.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things, man, where it's just like it's just a battle of the ego, and you just got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, and
Yeah.
but at the same time, I just still want that dog, and jiu-jitsu doesn't do it for me. Jason, like jiu-jitsu alone, competing in jiu-jitsu is fun and stuff, but it just doesn't do it for me. It's just I'm an old Irish guy. Do you like to bang and see who's got the toughest chin and put
Yeah.
the test? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a transition I'm still experiencing, brother.
Yeah, this. I trained with Miguel Torres, former world champion, multiple times over, one of the great pioneers of the sport. And
Yeah.
that dude still straps him up, and he still is the one. He's the one I'm not looking at when we're in between rounds. You know what I mean? For sure. He's the one in the room. And by the way, I got 100 pounds on him, or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, Branden, this has been fantastic. There's two questions that I ask every single person that comes on the show, and I'd like to ask you those two questions now. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. The first question is, if you had access to unlimited financial capital, how would you profitably grow your current business?
If I had unlimited access to capital, how would I profitably grow my business? I would hire. The infrastructure side and replicate at least halfway of me, so that I could focus on training, developing systems, growing, and then obviously scaling.
Yeah, great answer. Question number two. If you had to give up this business and every business you've ever been involved in and had to try something totally new that you've never done before, what do you think that might be?
Try something new.
Yeah, as a business. If you had to start a business that you've never been involved in the past, what do you think
Yeah.
that might be?
Man, I've never thought about that. And I have no like wants to do anything other than I just don't see myself as a gym owner. I see myself as like a brand, you know what I mean? Because there's so many things. I, I I guess honestly, fucking sell surfboards on the beach, man.
Dude, no shit. That's the second time I've gotten that question. And it's like the example I always think of when somebody is doing like what they should be doing is because they can't even think of anything. So they're just like, I don't know, hang out at the beach. That's literally the second time somebody has said sell surfboards on a beach. That's a great answer. It's my favorite answer. Fortunately, almost nobody that comes on the show has ever listened to the show before. So I can say this and they won't hear it. But Branden, this has been fantastic. We went longer than we typically do because your story is so I think engaging and rich and authentic, but more importantly, like super applicable to any of you out there. If you've been listening to this and you think any of it's been about fighting, you're not listening clearly. So rewind it and listen to it again. But for anybody who's still here, I know you want to hear more about Branden, hear more from him. Where can folks find you?
Well, you see the spelling of my name, so you can just follow me or friend me on Facebook. That's where a lot of my content is. We have a Champ Talk with Branden Hudson that's on Spotify, Apple Music. You can watch them on YouTube. You can watch them on our Facebook page at SBY. That's SBY like Salisbury. SBY MMA and Fitness. That's our Instagram handle. You can usually check me out on any of those platforms right now. So the YouTube channel is Champ Talk with Branden Hudson as well. Yeah. So that's about where I'm at. And Google my name. It'll pull up some stuff. So
Yeah, those links will be on the show notes below. Branden Hudson, I am honored to be your friend. I'm so glad we met. Thank you so much for sharing your story and hanging out with me for this podcast.
brother, the feeling is so mutual, man. Thank you.
All right, brother.